What's up, H-Town and Astros fans around the world? Welcome to episode 35 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network. I'm Jeff Balke, my partner, coming to us from the winter meetings in San Diego. Ron Burgundy, Jeff Blum. Drinking in Blummer, it always goes down smooth. How are things on the left coast this morning?
It's going good, yeah. I like the Ron Burgundy references, one of my all-time favorites.
Me too.
Yeah, kind of on a whim, got on a plane, came out here to San Diego, and that's why my voice is a little worn out, beat up, getting up early after a big day yesterday, kind of, shaking hands, talking, and doing a serious amount of mingling. But it's been really good to reconnect with a lot of people.
Well, I'm ready to get all of the inside scoops on every single player and where they're going. I'm sure you know all of them by now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure they've all told you their innermost
sponge of information.
Exactly. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and, of course, on YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep up with us, and give us a follow on Twitter, at Believe in Astros. You can find me at Jeff Balke and Blummer at Blummer27. Send us your comments, questions, best last-minute Christmas gift ideas, early New Year's resolutions. We'll take them all.
Those are all good.
I'll never forget one year at the Houston Press, a friend of mine who's a great investigative reporter, Craig Maliso, wrote a story called Last Minute Christmas, and it was gifts you could buy either at the drugstore or at the gas station.
And we're not talking about Buc-ee's.
No, we're not talking about Buc-ee's.
Yeah,
we're
Buc-ee's
talking about the place
that.
where you get... That's exactly right. That is exactly right. All right, quick word for our sponsor. Basketball is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all sports betting needs this season. Hey, Rockets, not too bad. Three of their last home games wins, including last night over a double OT win over James Harden and Joel Embiid.
Feel good.
You'll always find the... Oh, man, that had to feel good, right? You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. And as your continued source for all sports wagering information, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on your favorite sports and events. NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus and your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BLEAV to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. Blummer, it is... somewhat of an irony that this is episode 35, considering that our first topic, number 35 on the scorecard, number one in your hearts, Justin Verlander, signs a 2-year, $86 million deal with the Mets yesterday, ending his tenure in Houston. 2 Cy Young awards, 2 World Series titles. To quote Ron Burgundy, that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
We went from a warm stove to a smoking hot stove in an instant. And Justin Verlander was one of the first ones out of the gate. What are you going to remember most about JV's tenure here with the Astros?
Gosh, that's a great question because
it's hard, right?
It's really hard because I think all the tweets that were coming out from beat writers and statisticians across Major League Baseball, the understanding of how good he was as an Astro is going to take a little while to unpack. It's going to take more than a podcast. Right. It's going to take some of the comparisons that we've seen being tweeted out there. But it's also, knowing that he won 61 games during the regular season as an Astro. And I think that's pretty remarkable in the limited time he was here. And then you go back to how he got here and the process of a waiver trade deadline. He might be the last waiver trade that, him and Cam Maben coming over in 2017 are going to be the last 2 waiver trade deadlines that we hear about. But the fact that it went down to literally the wire and him accepting the opportunity to be traded to the Houston Astros, winning a World Series in 2017, and really becoming the leader of that rotation for the last 5-6 years has been remarkable. And the numbers that he was able to accomplish, one thing that I'll remember most about Justin Verlander, and it was in that 2019 season, it might have been his last start of the season in Anaheim. He is putting up Cy Young type numbers, competing with Garrett Cole for that Cy Young award in the same rotation. Right. But he had he had a game where he went out and struck out a bunch of Angels, got to the 300 strikeout plateau, and also got to the 3,000 strikeout plateau, which I thought was pretty phenomenal to do in the same night, and pretty much solidified the Cy Young for him in 2019. and, of course, the no-hitter that he threw in Toronto. So those are two pretty epic moments that he's had in my mind. He'll be missed, but I'm sure the payroll is pretty grateful.
I mean, my goodness, 43 a year. Nice work if you can get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a chunk of change. First of all, by the way, sweet Cameron Maben pull right there. That's a nice reference. That's a good one,
scab
man.
you pull off, but it was out there, yeah.
How many trivia people are going to remember that one? That's a good name to come. I'll have to set that aside for trivia later. I think for me, the thing that was so great about Verlander is just he became must-see baseball in the same way that Yordan Alvarez became must-see baseball. He was a guy that, even if you watch the game, as they say, chicks dig the long ball. Even if you watch the game for the long ball, he was a guy that you went out to watch. You wanted to watch him pitch. You wanted to see him match up against guys. And I think, to me, the thing that stood out for me just in general about his time here is how much better he got the later the innings got.
Yeah,
it was just a remarkable, thing to watch. I mean, there was a great episode of WKRP in Cincinnati years ago where they were trying to demonstrate how the more you drank, the more impaired you became as a driver. And in this particular instance, the more that Johnny Fever drank, the faster his reaction time got. And I remember feeling like that's basically Justin Verlander. The later it got in a game, the harder his fastball. And it was just that kind of thing. To me, I've always been a fan of the super athlete. Especially in baseball, it was always like the outfielder, Cesar Cedeno and guys like that. But watching him, you realize that same athletic prowess can apply to a pitcher, and it was just really, really impressive to watch. And he's obviously going to be missed, and I think has to be amongst the consideration for one of the greatest Astros of all time, despite only being here 5 years and really only playing 3.5.
Yeah, well, like I said, the 61 wins in the time that he was out there is pretty remarkable. I think only 19 losses in that time. And you start to go to the peripherals. Right. Obviously, the ERAs are great, 2 Cy Youngs. And you start to look at some of the peripherals. One number that always jumps out to me is that WHIP, the walks and hits per inning pitched. And he had a career with the Astros where he was a .83. So that's less than a hit or less than a base runner per inning, which is remarkable to me. And you're right. You could actually validate that argument with some of the numbers that he's been able to put up and then add those 2 Cy Youngs, add a couple of World Series championships to it. And I know that the postseason numbers may not match up to what he did in the regular season, but if you're looking at those regular season numbers, which is what you use to compare a lot of these guys, Justin Verlander is going to be at the top of those lists when you start to break down some of the top pitchers ever in the organization of the Houston Astros and doing it, like we said, in 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, and I think that's that argument that people make about particularly pitchers in baseball is the comparison of, say, a very long career of really high levels of talent versus a very condensed, incredibly high level of talent. And you see that in Hall of Fame arguments all the time. And I think in this, you're talking about a guy who's had a long career, but when he came to the Astros, it just seemed to spike. And it's really impressive. Now, one thing that he also did was eat a lot of innings. And that's one of the things that I think the Astros, the one concern you would have going forward, I mean, they certainly have the pitching staff to handle a loss of Justin Verlander, which is kind of incredible to say when you consider who you're talking about. Yeah. But that is one thing you're going to have to consider. He did eat a lot of innings. Now, obviously last year, Hunter Brown didn't come on until the end of the season. Lance McCullers only pitched in a handful of games at the end of the season from his injury, but that would be the one. I mean, ERA is going to be fine. They're going to be fine. Their bullpen is fine. Is going to continue to be great. The big question is who's going to eat up all those innings. Fromber certainly can. You would think Christian Javier will be able to do that. You do have to think about, can Jose Urquidy do that? Can Luis Garcia do that consistently? That would be the only sort of stat that I would be concerned about as an Astros pitching coach or manager.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you can't replace Justin Verlander. It's like saying you're going to replace George Springer, Carlos Correa, although Jeremy Pena did a damn good job of planting himself at shortstop and becoming the shortstop, so you didn't have to replace anything. You just said, Jeremy Pena, just keep being you, buddy. But
Right.
you know, the Astros have an ability, amazingly enough, during this stretch of winning, to be able to replace some of these superstars. You know, there was a lot of thoughts of how you're going to replace Charlie Morton, Garrett Cole. Some of those were inning eaters also when they left. But at the same time, I think 2022 was an absolutely incredibly unique season in the sense that your rotation was healthy. I think they were one of the teams that used the fewest numbers of starters, and there was a moment during that season where they went a couple of months using a six-man rotation, and inserting Hunter Brown into the situation could make that a six-man rotation to protect some of these arms and see if you can't get a little more of an extended outing from Urquidy, Garcia, and some of these guys to see if you can't eat up some of those innings. But maybe it is going from a five-man to a six-man to take care of those innings and protect these arms. But that's one thing, just being around here in San Diego, talking about the great 2022 season of the Astros was the amazing health that rotation had. Using eight starting pitchers throughout the course of a season is remarkable. So it's innings. How do you replace that, and how do you stay that healthy?
Yeah, it is unbelievable. And you have to think, okay, will they maybe, if they need the additional help? I mean, like you said, they have six guys. If they need the additional help, Brian Abreu has been a starter before. You could throw him as a starter in short stints. They have guys at the minor league level who can certainly contribute. Brian Bielak is still down there. There are other guys on the roster in the minor leagues who could certainly be brought up, and we don't know who's going to emerge, as well. I think that to me, I'm not worried too much about the pitching staff other than the innings. I think that's the only concern, and that's something they're just going to have to pay attention to. I will say good news for the Astros, though, on one front. 6 players named to the All-MLB team. Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, Verlander, and Framber Valdez all on the first team. Tucker and Presley on the second team. I don't think people understand the all teams, MLB, NBA, NFL. These are really important awards. These are awards that mean a lot, because what they're saying is that you are the best guy at your position in the entirety of the sport, right? And that's a big deal. I think it's an under-the-radar award that, to me, is so much more impactful in terms of determining just how great a player is.
Yeah, first team, second team, and you go second team All MLB. That means you're the second best player at that position, and the amount of competition that's out there is remarkable. 30 teams across the league, the amount of All-Stars, MVPs, and Silver Sluggers, Gold Glovers, all of these things that you have to take into account, and to have 6 Astros, that. Other than Ryan Presley, all those other guys have been on the field on a daily basis for the Astros. So you've got 5 starters out there who have contributed throughout the course of the season. And then you add Ryan Presley to that situation, Framber Valdez. I mean, it's remarkable. This season continues to get better, and it's great. I think the best part about it is the recognition. Because I think when you start to recognize these guys and how great they are, and you're starting to – all of these talks of 2017 are starting to fade away. And you're starting to recognize that, damn, this team is really good, and a lot of prognosticators out there are appreciating the fact that these guys are as good as they are and being as consistent as they've been throughout this entire controversy, and able to play that controversy away is what's incredible to me. But when you get 6 guys recognized off your team, that means you're doing a lot of very good things. I actually had a chance to see Kyle Tucker yesterday. He was floating around a little bit, and you talk about a guy with a big smile on his face.
Is he hunting for an extension?
Absolutely. I'm not sure who he's going to talk to about that, but I would have Jim Crane's ear, because you create that relationship and things usually happen pretty good. And Jim does a good job of recognizing talent and taking care of those guys. Yeah. But there was one particular guy walking through that lobby that was a little bit taller, a little more puffed out, and had a bigger smile than everybody else. And it was definitely Kyle Tucker. It was good to see him.
That's so great. I think you make a really good point, Blummer, about the fact that the recognition is such a big deal for these guys, especially after everything that's happened. It's funny how a lot of that talk about 2017 has faded relatively quickly, not just with the World Series win, but also, quite honestly, with what they're doing in the offseason. I mean, signing Jose Abreu, allowing Verlander to walk. Nobody's sitting here like going, oh, the Astros, here they go. They're going to just, they're going to go down the tubes like everybody else. Everybody's concerned now. They're like, this is a legitimate worry for all of these other teams. How are they going to beat the Astros? The Astros have become that team that everybody sits around and goes, okay, what do we got to do? We got to get, just like you said on the last podcast about teams in the AL West thinking about, we need pitching. Like, we're not going to be able to compete with the Astros unless we've got good pitching. And I think we're seeing that. That's a really good point. Before we get into the hot stove, I just want to make a mention of, man, there are some big numbers being thrown around. There was a really good story in The Athletic today from Ken Rosenthal talking about how this is like a combination of, number one, new collective bargaining agreement, which helps, the increase of the luxury tax threshold, which certainly helps. Those are all things. But Trey Turner, $300 million over 11 years. Dude is going to be like 40 when he's still getting paid this amount of money. I mean, the Mets, think about this for a second. The Phillies have 6 guys that they are paying $140 million to next season. 6. That's it. 6 guys. And that we haven't even, and that's, and then you talk about the Mets. The Mets are already over the luxury tax threshold, and they only have 26 guys signed to their roster. I mean, holy crap, man. These guys are just spending like they've got it coming out their ears, and they probably do. And we haven't even dug into the fact that Carlos Correa is still sitting out there, and Carlos Rodon, and Xander Bogaerts. And there are some big names still on the market.
There's
Wilson
some guy
Contreras,
that was a free agent out of New York, too. Yeah,
exactly. Never mind Aaron Judge. I mean, I feel like you almost have to set Aaron Judge like over here. He's like, there's Aaron Judge, and there's sort of everybody else. Although now with Trey Turner, I'm not sure. I mean, Blummer, you're starting to think about maybe you should come out of retirement for a season, see if you can get you some of that scratch.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great to come out of retirement and just thrash my body for one more season? Yeah, some of those numbers would make it worthwhile. And fortunately, I'm still on the big league insurance benefit plans, so they'd be able to take care of this corpse when it gets done. But it is amazing. I think it's incredible. It's a credit to the CBA, like you said, raising that CBT so some of these teams can go out and spend. And that's something that players have fought for over the years with the owners, is continuing to have, not a salary cap so that you can go out there and raise that market value. But it's remarkable, it's remarkable how they're able to go out there and get these contracts. And you're still seeing, we always thought that, Albert Pujols or Robinson Cano would be that last 10-year deal that you see, yet you still see teams going out there and players are going, give me 10, give me 11, and they're still being able to write those checks. The Phillies are going to have Bryce Harper for another 9 years. Then you add a Trey Turner to that for another 11 years. And I think that, the mentality may have shifted a little bit, because we saw these big contracts going to Cano in Seattle, Albert Pujols in Anaheim. At the time, those were American League teams where you had the designated hitter, and the idea might have been use these guys in positions, playing defense for 5 years, and then the back end of the contract, just push them over to DH and let them just hit. So that could be a similar idea with Trey Turner. Is the idea, he would be a little bit faster, quicker DH, not that prototypical power guy, but he's still hyper athletic. I think it's a credit to the Phillies recognizing that maybe Trey Turner was the best option, the most consistent option, the most athletic option, and gave him that big contract. But you talk about setting a market. Between DeGrom and Trey Turner, there's a lot of pitchers and a lot of other shortstops, most notably Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson, that went, dude, Trey, way to go, dude. You're the best, man. Set that market and that bar high. It makes it better because they're all very, they're within 1 or 2 years of each other, which I think is interesting. So are those other guys going to be able to garner the same amount of years with maybe a little bit lesser value? I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see.
Well, Correa is the guy that I'm really interested in, not just because he's a former Astro, but because he's a little bit on the youngish side from these other guys. He also is clearly the best defensive player out of all the shortstops out there. I mean, and although he doesn't quite have the power numbers and some of the average numbers that some of the other guys have, he's going to be really valuable to some team that wants to plug him in and keep him there. I heard the Cubs are talking to him. Which wouldn't really be a shock, although it seems like that would make some sense. They have a little bit of money to spend. But But getting to the Astros,
I heard a number.
apparently,
Sorry to cut you off, but I think the Cubs have $122 million left in cap room.
What are they doing in Chicago, man? I mean, the Cubs, they're acting like the little sisters of the poor up there. Like, come on, man, spend some money. You're the freaking Chicago Cubs. Mm-hmm. Come on, man. Break out that checkbook. Who's the damn owner of the Cubs now? Tell him to get that checkbook out and write some checks. I don't know, man. You've got Wrigley Field, for Christ's sake.
And you put players in there that are going to sell out every day, which is remarkable. Incredible what they're able to do because that fan base is so loyal. Throw them a product.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not like they're look. Now maybe they're saying, okay, we're going to hold off and make some money and then figure it out down the line. I mean, they wouldn't be the first team that put a pause on their spending for a little bit so they could recoup some of their costs. But I don't know. It would make sense for them to sign Carlos Correa. I'm all for all these National League teams signing away Astros players. Keep them out of the American League. I don't want to see them. I don't want to play against them. I don't want to think about them. I want them to be in a nice, tucked away, nice and neatly in another league where we don't have to think about them anymore. Now, speaking of the Astros, catcher apparently is a priority for them. Because Dusty Baker mentioned in his press conference yesterday that Wilson Contreras, who they are meeting with, maybe today even, is a catcher. There are also rumors that the Astros went in on the Sean Murphy trade market.
Yeah, that would surprise me a little bit.
I know that surprised me a little bit too. I mean, Sean Murphy's a great young catcher. No hate, but it is a little weird. And Martin Maldonado dropped a little. Maldi is the best cryptic message maker
his social media
perhaps
is
on the internet. I mean, his social media is so strong, and he drops the little "how soon they forget" message on Insta, which is just hilarious. But it does bring up the question. If they are hot on the heels of catchers, I mean, obviously Maldonado is an older guy; he's not going to be here forever. You would have thought, well, does that mean Corey Lee's going to be part of this, scenario, or Yanel Diaz? This makes it for an interesting question of, are they really looking at Wilson Contreras as a catcher, not as a left fielder / designated hitter?
It's interesting.
What are they What are they doing?
No, well, they're continuing to try and get better and just make everybody else in the league mad by acquiring these pitchers and continuing to be not just AL West contenders, but funny. World Series contenders. You can go out there and add the Jacob deGroms. You can go out there and bolster your rotation in Seattle, and the Astros are going to want to go, okay, we'll counter that with Jose Abreu and potentially Wilson Contreras. And if you can find that upgrade, you go do it. And I think that's what teams around the league or GMs around the league kind of think about, especially with these contending teams. How do I get better? How do I maintain this string of excellence that we are on? And where can we improve? And it's not a knock against Martin Maldonado. It's timing. Right. Wilson Contreras is available. And so why wouldn't you take a run at him and see what it would take to get him here now that you have $35 million, in cap room,
right,
or whatever you want to call it, and see if you can't get him here for a couple of years because maybe Corey Lee isn't ready yet. Maybe Yainer Diaz isn't ready yet. And if your worst case scenario is Martin Maldonado and then a Corey Lee or a Yainer Diaz backing him up and learning from Martin Maldonado how to become a big league catcher, you're in pretty damn good shape. And your pitching staff is going to be pretty happy with Martin Maldonado back there. So I think it's kicking the tires on something and then saying, worst case scenario, we've got a phenomenal catcher, Gold Glove quality and mentality behind the plate, and with our lineup, with the addition of Jose Abreu, we can sacrifice, maybe a Wilson Contreras offensively to have Martin. So it's not a knock. It's just there's an actual opportunity in timing to get a better offensive player because I don't think Wilson's better defensively than Martin.
No, definitely not. I will say that. Looking at it, this also speaks to the Astros' sort of aggression of being like, look, we're not going to wait around for things to happen. We're going to go out and make things happen. I always think about the year that the Packers drafted Aaron Rodgers. And Brett Favre was still their quarterback. And it was a huge deal because they drafted him in the first round. I forget, it was like the 19th pick or something in the first round. Everybody's like, oh, He's the heir apparent to Brett Favre and blah, blah, blah. Well, that turned out to be a pretty smart move on the Packers' part. And I feel like that's kind of the thing you have to do. Like, we've talked about on here the winning. No. But we talk about the things people do, that in all of sports, the Patriots and teams like that, where they understand that winning is fleeting, and you've got to try and hang on to it as much as you possibly can. And the Astros seem to be, they're being pretty ruthless in their approach. And I think you and I talked about how, like, I'm a fan of the team, not the players. I love the players, don't get me wrong. I love every single one of them when they play for the Astros. I root for them like they're my long lost brother. But the truth of the matter is if they leave and move to another team, I'm going to wish them absolutely all the best, except when they're playing the Astros, and then I hope they're terrible. It's like,
exactly.
It's just how it is. No hate. As my buddy Sean Pendergast likes to say, it's not real hate. It's sports hate. And there's there's a difference. And
there is a difference. That's a good call.
I think the Astros they're being aggressive, and kudos to them for doing that, especially given the fact they don't actually have a GM at the moment.
I know, it's pretty wild, but yeah, somebody in there is pulling the strings and trying to make these moves and make that happen. And it is a very proactive approach if you want to take that aggressiveness away and put a little more delicate word on it. Yeah. But they definitely have intentions of going out there, and the league is on notice that if you're going to go out and sign one of these guys, you're going to have to compete with the Astros, who continue to have the ability to go out there and sign these guys and get past a George Springer, losing a George Springer, a Garrett Cole, a Charlie Morton, and now a Justin Verlander, and still compete and be good. It's still incredible to me to watch this organization process and evaluate and sign.
It's got to piss off everybody. It's just got to. It's got to make everybody mad, which is satisfying in and of itself a little bit. Outfield is also obviously another area that the Astros are looking at. The names being floated out there. Brandon Nimmo's name is still out there. Andrew Benintendi is a name that's on that list. And your friend, our friend, America's friend, Cody Bellinger remains a rumored target of the Astros. Nimmo's a lefty with some power, but he's had injury problems. A lot of them actually over the last few years. Last year had a good year. Benintendi is great, but he's not a hard hitting guy, which is not really typically the Astros' bailiwick. Although he is great for average. And then there's Bellinger, who can't hit like a barn from 3 feet away with his bat, but he's probably one of the best center field defensively. One of the best center fielders defensively in baseball when he's on. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Obviously, I think Brandon Nimmo's the best of the crew, but also Benintendi and Nimmo are both left fielders. What are they going to? They're going to have like 6 left fielders on the team. I just wonder how they're going to sort all this out.
Yeah, well, the one thing with the shift, the ban of the shift coming in, that just affects the infield. It doesn't affect the outfielders. So the Astros do a very good job of positioning their guys and increasing their opportunity to make some of those catches. So that's a pretty good way to protect, maybe the guy that is not a true center fielder and put them in a better position to make some of these plays. But if you have 3 athletes out there, you're going to cover a lot of ground. So if you have a Chaz, a Benintendi, who we know Benintendi, unfortunately, back in 2018, played a phenomenal left field at Minute Maid Park and actually broke the backs of the Astros as they tried to get back to the World Series. But if you go Tucker, Chaz, McCormick, and then Benintendi or a Brandon Nimmo, who Nimmo has experience in center field, but maybe a little bit better in left field, and you create 3 athletes out there that can chase it a little bit and you put them in position, I think that's how you kind of overcome not having that traditional, go-getter type guy in center field. But I find it great that they're looking for the left-handed bat just to offset some of those right-handed hitters and create the separation. The only thing about Benintendi for me is he puts together such a great at-bat. He's not really that power guy anymore, but he kind of slaps that ball around, hits for a high average, gets on base a lot, can score you some runs. And I think that's where he might be appealing and might be a little more affordable in that sense, that you can plug him into maybe that 2 spot in the lineup and just have him be able to maneuver and then move Pena into a more production position in that lineup for the Astros.
That's a really good call. He hit 304 last year. Yeah. And so Benintendi's obviously a guy who can hit for average. he does get on base a lot. I mean, he certainly is, from that standpoint, kind of a classic number 2 hitter, in that sense. A guy who can, like you said, slap the ball around a little bit. And it's not like he didn't hit home runs. He had like 15, I think, or something last year. But I think you're kind of right. Plus, I kind of wonder, like you said, can they get him for a little bit less money? Particularly if you go out and sign Wilson Contreras, because you're going to have to give. You're not exactly going to back the truck up for Contreras, but you're definitely going to give him some money. Yeah. And so they do have some money to spend. This whole week is fascinating to me. Like winter meetings, to me, they're just. I mean, what is it? Let's before we go. What is it like down there at the winter meetings? Like, what is the vibe? Like, what's going? Like, is it just a bunch of players hanging around, like, and like owners just standing there with their checkbooks? Like, all right, it's like, what do you got to do? Is there a bunch of lawyers with contracts? Like, what is it like?
Well, that was always my impression of it, and I know in the late '90s, early 2000s, those kind of deals were getting done in that situation where you kind of wander through the lobby, you fisheye somebody, and you kind of, give that silent nod that says, "Hey, meet me in the bar here in about 20 minutes, and let's have a conversation." And you have a
Right.
pitcher of beer or a couple of shots, and you're like, "Done deal, let's go." You're a part of the team, And those are, that's where some of those historical moves were made and make for great legend and lore. But I don't think, I think it's changed a little bit since then. There's a lot of media action here on the second floor, but going through that lobby is really fascinating because you've got a lot of young, very smart, talented people who are trying to get into the industry. And I kind of enjoy that part because they are so eager and love the game so much and feel that they can bring something to the table. So I love the energy that some of these young, college students who love the game feel they can bring to an organization. So that's one factor that I love.
Oh, cool.
The other factor is you do see there's a couple of players, not many, but there's more agents floating around that you see, and they're kind of traveling in packs. Agents. It's these wolf packs that are just looking around going, I know there's money flowing out here. Who can we find it from? And then you kind of you'll see it at the bar. You'll see them kind of chatting a little bit, or you'll see this pocket of organization groups talking to agents over here. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of media members. There's an incredible amount of coverage on it. But I really feel the vibe of getting back in person and doing this in person brings a lot of that personality back to the game that we talk about and creates those legends, those stories, and a lot of the lore that we like.
Yeah, there's something about getting a bunch of I've been to a couple of all-star things and different stuff, and there's something about when you put all those people in a room together that it does generate some very interesting sort of combinations. You talk about all the agents. I keep picturing all the agents just walking around, like everyone in like a pinstripe suit, with their hair slicked back like a classic, walking through there, all of them smelling a little too much cologne, and just like walking through. Hey, what are we gonna do? Come on, let's press in the flesh as they do. Like it feels like a bunch of lobbyists, like in Washington.
Oh yeah, it really is. That's what agents do.
Running around trying to get. It's just so funny. And I always remember the line from the movie Late Shift, which was about the David Letterman, Jay Leno thing. And Letterman in it, the character that played Letterman, was talking about having to get an agent. He goes, "Agent is something you scrape off the bottom of your shoe." And I always remember thinking how funny it was because they really do feel. I mean, these guys are doing really important work for their players. Yet it does come with the connotation of kind of a weird, sleazy, thing. I just wonder, was when Scott Boras came through, was he just floating 6 inches off the ground? Was he being carried by a group of interns?
Yeah. So I've had an agent. I'm still with my baseball agent within that agency, but obviously I'm way on the back burner, since my playing days are gone. Right. But he couldn't be further from Scott Boras. Like you said, Scott Boras got the entourage. He's leading the way. He's got the logo on the left chest of everything he's wearing, and he's just kind of strutting through there because not only are owners recognizing, media loves him because he's a soundbite waiting to happen.
He is.
I apologize for my voice, but
it's all good.
My guys just kind of, you'll see other agents, you kind of tucked in a corner trying to hide a little bit and just kind of watch from afar, not wanting to be in the center of attention. because, they want to keep all their cards hidden. They want to, keep their moves hidden and who's available, who's not, and that kind of stuff. But it's such an interesting dynamic. But as far as dress is concerned, it's way less casual than the Italian suits and the slick back hair. These guys are in tennis shoes, jeans, hustling. But you're right, pressing the flesh, shaking the hands, and being seen is probably what's most important to these guys. But it would be real curious. I should look it up on my phone and track like how many steps and how much mileage I picked up yesterday just doing that lap through the lobby and shaking hands with people.
Get the watch, get the old watch on and start tracking those steps. I bet you've got a plenty. And I would think the best place in any of those at any hotel. I mean, the best place at any hotel is obviously the bar, for many reasons. But certainly at that's got to be the spot, right? I mean, that's got to be where there's people hanging out at the bar and doing their thing. I mean, that's got to be just fascinating to watch. I envy your being down there at the moment. Sounds awesome. Yeah, no, it's been a blast. It was the last second again, but I'm glad to be here, and it's kind of good to have that Astro mystique, because everybody that you talk to are like, man, congrats, what a great year. How fun was that? And that's always a great conversation. That is so cool. Are you down there for the full week?
No, I'm actually I'm coming back today after recording this podcast. I'm going to go down and shake a couple of hands. I have a couple of meetings set up with a couple of people that my agent has set up, and I'm going to go talk to them, and then I'm going to hop on a plane, get back, and make sure that I'm available tomorrow for my daughter's volleyball banquet.
Oh, man, nice. You can't miss the volleyball banquet.
Nope.
That's the most critical thing. All right, Blummer, thanks so much. Everybody, we'll be back later this week with another fresh pod during these really jam-packed winter meetings. I honestly am not sure what's going to happen between now and the time we record another one. Anything at this point is possible, given the fact that what's going on right now. I assume at least another $1 billion will be spent on players between now and later in this week. Thanks so much for everybody for listening. Brought to you by Bet Online, and a huge thanks to everybody all across the globe who's been listening and pimping us and hitting those like and subscribe buttons like you're killing a guy with a trident. I'll bring back one more Ron Burgundy reference before we get out of here. I've got about 100 of them I could lay out.
They're good.
Like right now in a row. It's like I could call Blummer. I could call you a dirty pirate hooker, but I'm not going to do that because that's not how I roll. So thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you later this week, and go Astros.